Welcome to A Celtic State of Mind. This is today's bulletin. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Ewan Robertson and Jim Simonetti. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having me.
Got some new blood. Journalist Ewan, how are you doing?
I'm very well. I'm probably the first non-Celtic minded person to be in here, so it should be an interesting show, and thanks very much to both of you for having me along.
No, we've been trying to organise it for a wee while. You're welcome here, Ewan. It's always good to have a balanced view. So if you bring someone in who I guess you would call neutral, we can get your views on various subjects involving Celtic. What will we be talking about today? Well, there's been a lot of headlines made from an interview given by Kieran Tierney where he opened up about his departure from his beloved Celtic. We'll be talking about that, and we'll be asking the question, is all forgiven? Is there anything to forgive? We'll also be looking ahead to Ferencváros. We will have a separate broadcast later on today with our Hungarian football correspondent Kevin McCluskey, but today we'll have a wee chat about how we see that tie going. Encham, the name of Encham is still being discussed. Neil Lennon says he's going nowhere. Personally, I'm happy to hear that, but we'll be asking you guys and girls listening at home what your thoughts are on Encham. Tommy Roderick looks to be on his way out. We said yesterday it was time for him to go. We want your reaction on that. And we'll be chatting about one or two other subjects that Scottish football has been dealing with over the last 24 hours. So, first up, Kieran Tierney. He opened up yesterday, Ewan, and I believe you watched the interview in full. What was your takeaway from that?
The takeaway for me was it was clear how much Celtic Football Club means to Kieran Tierney. You could even hear him talk about it, and he's kind of lighting up. It means the world to him. He grew up, standing in this terraces supporting the club, and he went on to play for the club, captain the club, win every domestic honour possible, and to play for his boyhood heroes. That's what came across to me. I think ultimately what's happened is the big talking point has been the papers picking up on the comments in regards to his departure from Celtic, which I think might be the first time he spoke about it. I'm not too sure.
I think it is. Yeah.
And there's some interesting points made, and I think the headlines were the comment regarding Judas being spray painted near his house, and other comments saying that he would be scared to come back to Celtic Park. I don't know when he said it if he was being 100% genuine, not genuine. If he really meant he would be scared to come back, he's probably just a little bit frightened of the backlash. But it's interesting what you used to think about that, because it's very interesting comments.
It is, and again, what we always like to do is have a look at the comments coming in via YouTube, Twitter and Facebook. But on a personal level, I was disappointed because he was a fantastic player. I had it in my head that he was going to be the next Paul McStay, in that he was going to spend his entire career at Celtic. My view on it, Ewan, and I'm no psychologist, but I feel that the attitude or the way that he maybe viewed the game in his career may have been changed by Brendan Rodgers. I think his head was turned because Rodgers, we know the type of opportunist that Brendan Rodgers is in terms of careerism.
Yeah.
And I think that players like Kieran Tierney and potentially even Callum McGregor's attitudes towards Celtic, they still love the club, of course they do, they always will. But I think maybe Brendan Rodgers turned his head a wee bit. That's my view on it. When he left, I remember the Scottish Cup final against Hearts, and there was still a notion that he might feature in that game, but he wasn't even on the bench. And I remember him walking around the Hampden, the actual running track around the pitch, and engaging with Celtic fans, and he looked gutted. I was down the front talking to someone that I knew down there, and he looked genuinely gutted. At that point, he'd have known that the Arsenal deal was on the table. I think he was torn, I really do. I was saddened to hear that he feels maybe frightened to come back to Celtic Park. I don't think that's the majority view on that people won't forgive him. Judas, the word Judas, is reserved for one player in the history of the Celtic Football Club, and it's not Brendan Rodgers. Jim, what's your view on Kieran Tierney? Is he welcome back? Of course he is.
Absolutely. Ewan's a sports journalist. When I never listened to Kieran speaking on the radio. I'm so disappointed if that's the behaviour of Celtic fans, or an element of Celtic fans. You look at Kieran Tierney when he played for Celtic. Now, when you look at Celtic, Celtic's the fans. No matter what. Celtic is the fans. Kieran played for the fans. He played with all his heart. He put everything in to every game. He won the fans over. He played for them. He helped them win trophies. He helped them on the road to 9 consecutive league titles. He's helped put them to the next level of going for 10 league championships. Why would you criticise a Celtic player in that manner, using the word Judas? It's wrong for a man to even have a thought that he would be scared to come back to this great city of Glasgow, to come to see Celtic or to come to see his family. That's so sad. You couldn't get angry at that. It makes you sad. Once a Celtic player, you're always a Celtic player. Even the guy that went and joined Rangers, he made a decision on that, and it was wrong in how he done it. But what has Kieran Tierney done wrong? He has helped the financial state of Celtic Football Club by getting that money put into them. So with that money that's come into Celtic from the transfer from Arsenal, it's helped us look at other things that we can do. So let's not just think about Kieran Tierney going away to Arsenal. He's helped an injection of a massive amount of money that will help us going forward. Kieran Tierney, well done, son. Excellent. Well done for going to Arsenal. Well done for the achievement at Celtic. And well done for winning an FA Cup final medal. And well done for being the lad that you are. And well done for still supporting your local youth football team and helping them with strips, etc. Things that people don't see. Kieran Tierney, God bless you, son, and all the best.
Well, Jim, why don't you just get to the point? What side of the fence are you on here? Brilliant. Yeah. Brilliant, Jim. Excellent. And by the way, I think there's a lot of Celtic fans share these sentiments. What I loved, I remember thinking back to Arthur Shelby with the old Celtic strip on. I'm just getting into Peaky Blinders. How bad's that? But he came out and it was a Tierney talk. Conor McGregor. It was a
he
Tierney
talked about that yesterday.
You know?
See, the thing with Kieran Tierney is, I'm not a Celtic fan, but looking from the outside, there's a great humility about the guy.
Yeah.
You know, he's very down to earth. He's not one of these players, there's a famous Tesco bag. I don't go down to that. That's a kind of sensationalist headline as well. But I don't think that, you'll be able to tell me better than me, a player who's came through Celtic in the last 5, 10, 15 years has had such a strong relationship with the fans. That might be why so many fans were hurt by the decision. And on the Judas point as well, that's one person who's done that. Mm-hmm. It might not even be a Celtic fan. You don't know, And the other thing about him leaving is he broke his leg famously when he was about to make his debut, I think, against Partick Thistle. We spoke about that. So you've got to consider that footballers' careers are short, mm-hmm. And they've got to be selfish to an extent, and one day they could get a really bad injury and never play again. And Kieran Tierney is a player who more than most know about that, because he's had a really bad problem with his pelvis, which is potentially curtails careers. He's going down to Arsenal. He's won all he can win at Celtic. Mm-hmm. Domestically winning the European Cup at Celtic in this day and age is going to be very, very, very difficult to do. He's going down to London. He's going to bet himself as a person, as a footballer, and he's also the wages that he can make down there compared to up here is hugely different. If you're in your job and you get the offer to go down somewhere and double and treble your wages, not many people will be able to say no to that.
This is the thing, we get kind of blinded by the emotion and the passion of supporting your football club, but when it comes down to the reality of it, the pounds and pence, the mortgages, the wives, the kids, these are all considerations for every single player. I think when you look at what he has done since he came back from his injuries as well, Ewan, you look at where he might progress also, it may go further than Arsenal. I know a lot of people think that Arsenal, I'm not saying it's a stepping stone, but when, with hindsight, you might look at his next move and see that it actually was, because he could progress even further. Jim, I'm going to ask you this question. Celtic have, prided themselves on bringing in young talent from elsewhere.
Yeah.
And saying to them, you can use Celtic as a platform.
Absolutely,
so Van Dijk, Wanyama, the list goes on, Dembele, Eduard, perhaps. Do we do the same with Tierney? Is he a shining example of coming to Celtic's academy? Are you saying to kids of 8 and 9, look what happened to Kieran Tierney? This could be your route to the elite leagues as well. Is that something Celtic might use as a selling point to some of the youth players out there?
Absolutely. See, before I come on to that, you're a sports journalist, Ewan. So we're going in hearsay, and maybe it was Celtic fans. Until we see the person who wrote that on the wall or wherever they wrote it, we're only surmising it was Celtic fans. We don't know for fact. Sometimes in journalism, they don't actually write fact, which I've found over the period due to some things that Jimmy Johnston, Academy Charitable Trust is doing. But we'll talk about that later on, Paul.
Yes.
So it's factual. Who done it? Who was the person that done it? We're saying it might be Celtic supporter, or we've surmised it's a Celtic supporter of a Celtic persuasion. Within that time as well, Kieran Tierney didn't desert us. Kieran Tierney was transferred when he was injured.
He was.
Kieran Tierney probably wouldn't have featured again, possibly for Celtic for the remainder of that season. So there's another thing in the young man's defence. He didn't deserve us. We weren't a troubled team. We were a team that was always positive. So I'm not getting how people can actually think wrong of him. Back to your question, Paul, to me. Yes, Celtic's a platform club. Celtic will remain a platform club. By that I mean for players to come on and show what they can do. Once we achieve the 10 championships, without being complacent about it, without taking it for granted, once we have achieved that, then we should be looking at another platform where we're in the higher leagues, in a better league, where we can get more finance in. Be looked at in a more global way than what we are at the moment.
Yeah.
That's when we stop becoming a platform club, when players of the ilk want to come and play for Celtic, not just to be shown on a platform that they could better themselves, but to stay at the club and to become better and develop better as they go on within their career. So hopefully that's answered your question there.
It definitely has. And again, I think the only reason there was a backlash is due to the amount of love that Celtic fans actually have for Kieran Tierney. And I hope that the reaction since he came out and shared what had happened to him, because it's been largely a positive reaction from Celtic fans, guys who are embarrassed if it was a Celtic fan. Was it misspelt, Judas? Because if so, it might not have been a Celtic fan. I mean, there's a process of elimination here, certainly from a journalistic perspective, Ewan.
I think you presume it was a Celtic fan, but that's just here. So the other thing I'll say is that Kieran Tierney would have had the opportunity to leave Celtic before he did.
Absolutely.
Clubs, his performances domestically in Europe, they've got the attention of clubs with his age and his profile, and like it or not, he can probably recruit players from Scotland for cheaper than he could if he was playing in England. So he would have had the opportunity to leave Celtic before, and he was probably loyal to a point. And you don't blame him for going and betting himself. I don't think you can, especially when he gave so much to the club over so many years. And I don't know what you think, but I don't see a day that he won't play for Celtic again.
You think he'll be back?
100% later on in his career.
I'd love to see him back, but one thing I would say to you as well, though, Ewan, it's interesting you were saying there how the Celtic fans, has there been a player in the last, let's say, generation who Celtic fans have taken to more? Probably not. But then you've got that strange parallel with James Forrest, who's, you look at his appearances, everything he's achieved in the game, just his assists in the last couple of seasons. Yeah, he's the first guy that Celtic fans criticise.
I noticed that the other night. I didn't watch the game. I was watching the Champions League. I watched the highlights, but it seemed that he was getting a lot of criticism for his performances. And James Forrest is a player whose numbers have been incredible over the last few years. And I don't know what your opinions of him are as a player, but I think he's been a top player for Celtic.
One of the first names on the team sheet for me, because when James Forrest plays a 6, there's a perception that he's had a stinker. You know, and sometimes you forget just how effective he is until you look at the figures. And I'm not a big stats man, but, you know, we do have someone who does the stats for a Celtic state of mind, and his figures are tremendous, and they have been for a couple of years. One of the points that one of the listeners made the other day was that, you know, people keep saying he's not being challenged, but he's had 2 excellent seasons without a real challenge for his position over the last 2 years. And I just think he's just coming back into the fact that he's been out of the game like everybody else for a number of months, and it's maybe just taken him a wee while to settle back in.
Absolutely, Paul. It's easy to criticise, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is.
It's so easy to criticise. So, if you look at stats in a game as well, his stats are up there high. But what about his work off the ball?
Mm-hmm.
Where's his stats off the ball? Where is that when he's taking players at the game? You don't always need to be on the ball to be in the game. You're coming off, you're coming taking players away. So Sir Alex Ferguson had a saying as well. Some of the best players are the players that are off the ball, who have got the knowledge to take players away with them. Chris Sutton used to do it magnificently with Henrik Larsson. He would take players away.
Great space.
Space here, creating space for others to go into a position with the ball. These guys do all these things. At the moment, it would be hard for me to criticise a Celtic player without constructively criticising them. But I don't think this is a season for us to be jumping on just to criticise for the sake of it, because maybe we don't see what we want to see in a game. Let's think out the box and look to see what people are doing off the ball as well.
Now, there's loads and loads of comments coming in, so let's have a wee look. Thank you to everyone who is tuning in on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter. If you are watching on YouTube, make sure to subscribe. It's free of charge, and you can be notified of upcoming broadcasts, of which we have been broadcasting on a daily basis, sometimes multi times. Gary Doonan, who is a regular contributor to the Axon Bulletin, good deal at the time for all. Is it because of a young youth player who came through and fan that causes a mixed reaction? Wanyama and Dembele, all the same age as Kieran Tierney when they left and still revered. 5 years in the first team, 15 years, all in at the club. There shouldn't be a forgive him scenario. I'd agree with that.
By the way, Gary's thanks for contributing as well, Gary, to the Celtic state of mind. Because again, Paul, this is the people's show that contribute, and they're all part. It's their show. It's not just our show that's on it with you. And Gary's bang on. You've got to look what the guy's done. But maybe because they think, or people out there think, Kieran Tierney, what's the word we all use, knows what it's all about. Mm-hmm. And maybe Dembele, Wanyama, Van Dijk didn't really know what it was all about. But they did. The professional footballers, they went on to become better. Look at Virgil van Dijk. Where was there anything behind him and or anything like this when he left? The answer's no. And look what's happened to him. We should be proud that these players played for Celtic and went on to achieve a greatness.
What can he achieve, do you think, Ewan?
I think he's a top player. I think that, look at the English Premier League, it's probably the biggest league in the world, it's arguably the best, and the two best left backs in the league, in my opinion, are both Scottish, and Robertson and Tierney, and it's an interesting dilemma for Steve Clarke to have. Tierney's not always been fit for Scotland. I don't think he's played a lot of football, but I think that Arsenal's 100%. It's a huge club, Arsenal. I think we probably don't realise it up here because in recent seasons they've not had the success that they're used to back in the Wenger era. But I can see him going to play for another level with your top clubs. I'm talking, your Manchester United probably need a left back. He could easily go there. Yeah, I don't know if he'd go abroad. He seems like a kind of guy that likes the home life, doesn't he?
He does.
The interview he done when he first joined Arsenal, he mentioned he hadn't actually been into the city centre yet. I think that he's probably a player who'd stay in Britain. But there's no reason why clubs like Barcelona and Real Madrid won't be in for him. Because you look at the left backs and he's got it all. He's a real throwback player. And the biggest thing for me and Kieran Tierney as a player is his mentality and his attitude. He works so hard. He's got a winning mentality. He never gives up. He's not scared of a challenge. I think the one area of his game which will improve by going down to England is the technical aspect of his game. I think if you look at Robertson going forward, compared to Tierney, that's probably where Robertson's better at the moment. But you've seen it even at Arsenal this season, the ball he can put down the channel, round the corner to Aubameyang. I think he mentioned that in his interview yesterday. The one big difference from going down to Arsenal was the technical aspect of how good the players are there on the ball, and I think that's something that he'll improve on at Arsenal.
I loved when he was describing his house and he called it my bit. And it was spray painted around about my bit, and I thought to myself, he is a homebird, isn't he? R. Gerald 1, nothing to forgive. If he was my boy, I would have been super proud of his decision. Once a Tim, always a Tim.
Absolutely.
I remember asking, and I mentioned this the other day, I did ask Danny McGrain the question about whether or not Tierney should have left, and McGrain said yes, he should have left. I then said, would you have left? He goes, well, no one asked me. But we did find out that Manchester United did make an offer for Danny McGrain.
Yeah,
but Jockstein didn't tell him. So a similar scenario to George Conley. There was an approach for George Conley as well, and he never knew until I was writing the book, and Tommy Docherty told me.
Agents would be all over that this stage as well, wouldn't they?
They'd
see the money and they'd be straight in.
They would drive over. Paul, it's interesting as well. You look at it, Ewan's quite right there, Robertson, Tierney. Regardless, two of them are part of Celtic.
Mm-hmm.
Two of them are part of Celtic. Okay, Andy Robertson was one that got through the net, but he was still part of Celtic. So there's two fantastic left backs that's been there at the club over the last few years. One is a youth player leaving to go on to achieve greater things down in Liverpool, and Kieran Tierney achieving great things with Celtic, and now going on with Arsenal. And we look at the left back situation at the moment as well, with various names getting mentioned, and young Hickey there with a club like Bayern Munich, who I thought destroyed the opposition last night. It's great that we've still managed to get these type of players involved with the club, and the secret is to try and keep them, isn't it? But hopefully that happens in the years to come.
I would ask, who was the left back coach at Celtic that allowed Hickey and Robertson to leave? But that's another discussion. Because there's three left backs you've mentioned in one breath there, who all of whom at the moment we've been speaking about Hickey this week. And all of them will probably end up Scottish internationalists.
It's amazing, isn't it? But Stephen made a good point yesterday. Stephen's our international pundit.
I listened to the podcast on my way through, so I could.
He's big in Spain and Portugal.
Aye, he's big in Spain and Portugal.
Why is that?
Aye, but he's getting some.
The press have picked up on Stevie Mullen, and he's now described as a football pundit.
Okay.
And the Roy Keane of a Celtic state of mind.
Yes.
Which is absolutely brilliant. Cracking guy. Great guy, does great work for St Rocks and Rock Talk. By the way, we love him to death. He's brilliant. But Stephen made a point yesterday about Hickey in his game, and but you're always improving your game. You're always improving that. But it is interesting that left back situation. But I think that is in our discussion. John, yeah. we've got to have,
It is simply because we know people who were involved in the youth football at that time who actually commented on the fact that Tierney was very close to being let go also.
But these guys are very good coaches.
Yes.
He actually mentioned that on the podcast the other night. He said that he wasn't playing with the 20s and the reserves, and he was the one who was left back at the training ground, pardon the pun, and that's how he ended up training with the first team. It was Dyla and Collins, and Dyla loved him. And that's where he went. On Aaron Hickey, it's interesting, so I listened to it on the way through yesterday, and I like him as a player. He's very young. Stevie mentioned inconsistency. I think at that age, you're going to get that in a player. Look at the appearances he's made. I was at the Scottish Cup final, you alluded to Celtic Hearts. I was working at that game, and I thought he was brilliant.
Yeah.
I thought he was one of the best players in the park.
For 60 minutes, and then I thought he'd get tired, which that's why down to Levine for not taking him off. But I think he's a player that Celtic should be looking at, because Bayern Munich's the one he's getting heavily linked to. If he goes there, he's not going to play for Bayern Munich. He's going to play for the second team. I think it's in the third division, which is no bad thing. I think as a player in that environment, high level of coaching, occasionally training with the first team, you're going to develop as a player. But to me, if Celtic could get him for circa £1 million, I'd be all over that, because I think he's a player that can develop. And to me, the Hickey thing, if you're playing for Hearts at Tynecastle week in, week out, that atmosphere is I think it's the best atmosphere in Scotland, in my opinion.
No, would be interesting, Ewan. That would be interesting. What would have been the development stage of Kieran Tierney at 18 years of age and Aaron Hickey at 18 years of age?
I don't think Tierney had played for Celtic in the first team by the time that Hickey came through his appearances. So it'd be interesting, but I think that Greg Taylor's playing left back for you at the moment, and he's doing quite well by all accounts. I've not watched every game, but I think Hickey's got that versatility as well, where he could maybe cover the right hand side of defence as well, albeit that's a position that Celtic are very, very strong in this season.
When I look at it, and Jim revealed or commented on the fact that Celtic actually have a sell-on clause in the contract to Hickey. So if Hickey was to sign for Celtic for 1.5, it's not really 1.5. So you can match maybe a bid from Bologna, let's say, or Bayern Munich. Yeah. And although we wouldn't normally pay as much in wages, would Celtic be looking at the fact that they saved 25% on the transfer fee and they can build that into the deal? That could be the deal clincher, I think. The fact that someone had the foresight to put in the sell-on clause when they let the guy go.
Absolutely. So if we get him into Celtic and we help his development, he becomes a bigger asset, doesn't he? Becomes a bigger asset for us.
He definitely does now. The comments are coming in thick and fast. We will work through as many of them as possible. Kevin Graham, who will be back with us next week, states that Kieran Tierney was forgiven as soon as he was pictured in an Arsenal kit. The lad made his decision in circumstances that we could never understand or judge. I love that he has won the FA Cup and is doing well. Well, good on you. And John,
forgiven for what though?
I know, for going and being ambitious. Yeah. You can be ambitious at Celtic. It's something I'm going to ask Ewan at some point today in relation to 10 in a row, right? Because that's what we're fixated on. That's become an obsession for Celtic fans, and rightly so. And I keep asking, what after that? What next? And I think, Kieran Tierney maybe got the opportunity a wee bit earlier than he would have expected. Yeah. Maybe after 8 in a row, he might have wanted to stay until 10 in a row, who knows? However, he's then looking at the fact that, injuries can curtail your career overnight. So, yeah, nothing to forgive whatsoever. John Paul Mason, who again is a good friend of A Celtic State of Mind, is commenting on Facebook. If any fan at Celtic Park has an issue with KT leaving for Arsenal, then he should not bother coming back. I was sad to see him go, but I've been delighted to see him tear it up down there and win the FA Cup. I'm sure he will win a lot more. I think he will win a lot more elsewhere. You look at the progression, and I'm not comparing Tierney to this player, but of Gareth Bale, initially when he went over to Spain and the impact he had, different types of player, but you can make that step up from the English league to that level, can't you?
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think Tierney will be at Arsenal for a long, long time if he chooses to leave, because I think clubs will come in for him if he continues to play at the level that he's played at since lockdown, because I think before lockdown his career at Arsenal had been stagnated by injuries, but when he's fit, he's a top player. How much he's going to win at Arsenal? He's already won the FA Cup, which is a prestigious trophy. Can I see them winning the league in the next 3 to 5 seasons? Probably not. So you're looking at the Europa League and Cup competitions, and I think Tierney is ambitious, and if other clubs come in for him, I can see him moving on quite soon.
Mm-hmm. There's loads of other topics to comment on today, Ewan, and one of the big ones is the European draw. We came through the challenge of Reykjavik the other night, 6-0. People are criticising us for giving Julian, big licks the following day, saying he had a great game. But I mean, you can only play who you're playing. We've been drawn against the Hungarian champions Ferencváros, and we will have Kevin McCluskey on later on today to talk a wee bit more and give us an insight into that team, who their men to watch are, etc. Is it a good draw? Is it a tough draw? What do you think, Ewan?
I think you'll be confident to win that game, won't you? Celtic should be beating Ferencváros, and they'll have some good players. Could be a tricky tie, but Celtic should win that game, no problem in my eyes.
But the Hungarians for way back.
Puskas,
what a player. Actually, Paul, Puskas, Santa Maria, Hento, Di Stefano and Gento all grabbed Jimmy Johnson after the Real Madrid game and took him away for a photograph and says, "You belong with us." Now there was guys, 5 European medals, 4 European medals, 5 European medals, and they asked Jinky to go and join them.
I'd love to see that picture.
Sorry, we're still looking for that picture.
I'd love to see that picture.
We think it's possibly in the boardroom of Real Madrid. Sorry, I've diversed because as soon as we mentioned Hungary and Puskas, I thought
it back.
I thought of the King of the Jungle. But they were great, the Hungarians back in the day, weren't they?
They were, and they were a massive influence on Jock Stein. You know, don't forget when Celtic won the double, part of the reward for winning the double was that Sir Robert Kelly took the squad to the World Cup finals because Neely Mockin was representing Celtic, as was Bobby Evans.
Yeah.
Bobby Collins was in the squad as well. So the rest of the team were taken as a reward for winning the double the previous year to the 1954 World Cup finals. And Jock Stein soaked up everything about the Hungarian national side at that time, Ewan, and they were a massive influence on how he viewed the game. And he's still a player at this point, but he's already thinking ahead. This is 11 years before he takes over at Celtic. And he's already thinking ahead, but the Hungarians had him hooked when he watched them. And there was a famous victory against England. And that tape was watched again and again and again by Jock Stein throughout his managerial career.
Similar colours to Celtic as well, just looked at the badge there. Budapest, great city as well, one of my favourite cities I've been to, but look, I can't see Celtic having any problems. I think the mind games have been gone with their coach saying the pressure's all on Celtic, but you know, it's at Celtic Park, it's in Glasgow. I think we'll be quite comfortable.
How have they been doing, you and over the period?
Put me on the spot there.
I'll put you on the spot. Just I thought maybe you'd have had a wee insight to them. The journalism side, you know.
The good thing with Kevin, who'll be on later on this afternoon, is he's based there, and
of course
he does keep an eye on the Hungarian football. So he hopefully can give us an insight into who to watch.
Do you know what I think's great about that, Paul? Sorry, we had a discussion off mic. About Kevin and whatever. Different papers want to speak to him, different organisations want to speak to him, but he's chosen a Celtic State of Mind as a platform to discuss. Well done, excellent.
He'll be on the BBC tonight, but the exclusive is with a Celtic State of Mind.
Fantastic, well done.
That's true, by the way.
Yep, well done.
Next point on the agenda then, Ewan, Olivier Encham. I'm a massive fan.
As am I.
I think he constantly gets called inconsistent. He came on the other night and people again say, how can you judge it? We were playing a pub team. You know, that's the kind of comments you get. He came on and he was brilliant. He never gave the ball away. I mean, the play leading up to the fantastic Edouard goal all came through Encham. He showed the other night what we love about him. We don't always see that, to be fair. Where does he fit in? Does he start? And if so, who drops out?
I think you can be flexible with that, can't you? Because for some games you're going to want different players in there. But to me, I've got lots of Celtic supporters as friends, and I've always loved him as a player. He's a real kind of Rolls Royce technically. The way he can manipulate the ball, especially his pass and the way to pass, to me is probably the best at Celtic in terms of his through balls and his passing. The issue will be is who does he come in and replace, because you've got McGregor, Brown and Christie's playing in there. If you go to a 3-5-2, you're still going to have 3 central midfield players. So probably different games you could probably swap in with Brown or McGregor or Christie. You can be flexible there.
Yeah.
I think I was really surprised he didn't start the other night, because with all due respect to their opponents, Celtic expect to dominate them. I thought it was a chance to rotate and give minutes to Encham. Talk about inconsistency. I think he might even be judged on the kind of stereotypical Scottish view of a footballer who should run about like a headless chicken and smash into challenges, but ultimately football's not really like that anymore, especially at European level like he played the other night. And I think that in certain games, the Kilmarnock game where you drop points, I think that if Encham was on the pitch there and you're playing against a low block, he's the sort of player that can play those intricate passes through, which could help out. And do you need Brown and McGregor to play against the so-called lesser teams? Probably not. And it's a big decision for Neil Lennon to make, though, because you know, if you're talking about taking Brown out of the side, you're taking your captain, your leader, and someone who really drives the side forward, and his mentality is up there, and that'd be a major reason behind Celtic's success. You look at managers like Dahlia, Lennon, Rodgers, you could argue the most important figure at the club during this whole period for Celtic has probably been Brown.
Oh, without a doubt, particularly when Rodgers left. I've said that, you know, the way that he rallied the team and the way that he dragged us over that line. For me, Brown and Lennon were the two main parts of that. Had we just signed Encham, and that was the first time I was seeing him, because the familiarity thing, it breeds a bit of contempt. If that was the first time us seeing him the other night, we'd all be raving about him, you know. And I think that you're right. We've got the personnel to adapt things. We've spoken about this time and time again. People get fixed on a view that you have a formation, and that's your formation. That can be fluid throughout a game, never mind from week to week.
It's going to be fluid throughout the game. It's going to be. But it's even made a valid point yesterday. Why Brown? It could be Forrest. It could be Christie. It could be whoever in there. We've got the flexibility to move it round about to suit the circumstances. Ewan there again has made it a point maybe about some fans that they think that we should be running about, constantly running about. There's a difference between constantly running about and having a high intensity in your game. There's two differences. The difference with the high intensity is you're working intelligently and how to break down the opposition. You don't need to run about like a headless chicken in a game. You be composed and you look, and some people might think, he needs to go here. He doesn't. He's doing a job. So the headless chicken thing is hopefully the fans have become, even myself, has become more educated. You don't really need to run about crazy. As a youth coach as well, hopefully that's what we try to put across and teach as well. Don't need to run about and just waste energy.
It's a great point. I wasn't just meaning Celtic fans.
No.
Scottish football mentality is a player who runs about and smashes into tackles. And I've played football growing up, and you get coaches, and I've often found this, and you'll know this very well from your Jimmy Johnson Academy, is that some coaches will always prefer the guy who runs about and works hard for him. I'm not saying don't work hard, you have to work hard, but to me, I always want to like watching a ball player. I think that's where probably Scotland's national team has struggled in recent years. We've not really had that type of player.
I always knew that I was born in the wrong country. That's what it was, Ewan. That's what I'm saying. That dodgy elbow and the fact I should have been born in Italy or something like that. I did mention Peaky Blinders. Please, ladies and gentlemen, I've just started the second series, so no spoilers. I'm just at the bit where the garrison's been blown up. So no spoilers, please, on the comments. But we will go to some of the comments because they are coming in rapidly, and some from regular viewers and listeners of A Celtic State of Mind, and some new. So keep them coming. And if you're commenting on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the channel because we are contributing loads of content on a daily basis. Penalty spot. Kevin Tate.
Or Kevin.
Tierney never left Celtic. We sold Tierney. Yeah. It's a good point as well. I mean, dare I say, Charlie Nicholas, who a lot of people are not a big fan of in terms of his punditry, he was a golden boy in 1983. Liverpool wanted him, famously chose Arsenal. But having spoken to Charlie Nicholas, he didn't want to leave Celtic. That was something that was engineered by the board, who looked at that transfer fee as £750,000, and he was leaving Celtic, and that was the bottom line. Some Celtic fans may find that difficult to accept, but that was a situation then. And I think when Celtic are being offered for Kieran Tierney maybe 25 million, or dare I say it, 40 million for Eduard, the situation is out of the player's hands a lot of the time. What do you think? Do you think that would be the case with Tierney?
Aye, of course. It goes out their hands and their hearts. His heart will be going, I don't really know if I want to do this. He'd have been in turmoil, Kieran Tierney. But I would like to say to Kieran, if he ever tunes into this, is regardless, he is part of it. Once we get to that 10 league championships, he's part of it. He is part of it. And he's part of it because he's helped with finance to bring in other players. But that lad's heart would have been running about crazy, and that would have been one of the hardest decisions that he's ever had to make. But here's the thing as well, Ewan, Paul. Ewan is quite rightly stated, he doesn't think that Arsenal is the end team for Kieran Tierney.
Yeah, I agree.
But Kieran Tierney's decision to move on will be easier to move from Arsenal to whoever he moves to than from Celtic to Arsenal.
Yes.
That's the hardest decision in football that young man is probably or will ever make.
First cut is the deepest.
First cut is the deepest.
As they
Pal
say.
Rod.
Now, there's another music reference.
Stephen said that, didn't he?
Yes. Can't help
the
it,
music's
Jim.
come
Can't
out,
help
sound
it.
and vision, and first cut is the deepest.
Now, Neil Lennon has actually come out and said Encham is going nowhere, Ewan. But one player who looks to be on his way out is Tommy Rogic. We've been speaking about him all week. We said yesterday the time was right for Tom to leave. Now, that's not a popular view among Celtic fans.
Right.
You just had to look on social media yesterday. People are upset. They're unhappy. My counter to that would be that what has Tom Rogic done since Neil Lennon took over, right, that would make you want to keep him? Now, I love what he's done previously, all the great goals that he's scored. I mean, I'm thinking about Rangers, I'm thinking Aberdeen, Kilmarnock. I know his importance in the history of Celtic Football Club and also in the 9 in a row era. But I think it is time to go, and I think with, the £4 million that's been quoted, you could invest that, you could reinvest it in a deal for the likes of Shane Duffy and David Turnbull. There are going to be Celtic fans out there who are saying, well, why sell to buy the two guys? Just bring them in, we've got the money.
Yeah.
I think it would be a cute move, business-wise, to move Tom Rogic on. He's not playing. What's your view on that?
I was looking at his stats here. I think it was 16 games last season, 17 the season before. He's became a bit part player down to injury under Rodgers. He was really important, I think, to Celtic, and he's provided some brilliant memories for you and your fans, especially the one at Aberdeen. I think is probably up there. There's a couple of brilliant solo goals he's scored against Rangers as well. To me, if Celtic can get £4 million for Tom Rogic, they should run to the bank, because that is unbelievable value from Qatar. Maybe that's why the fee is so high, because he's not played over the last few years, and there's injury concerns over him, I'd say. I think you got to touch on the Kieran Tierney point again. Football clubs are businesses at the end of the day, and it's probably more difficult for fans to see it that way, because to them it's everything, but to people from the outside it's a business. So if you can sell Rodgers for £4 million and you can recruit Duffy and Turnbull for £4 million, say spend, I don't know what the fee is for Duffy, it's rumoured it's £2 million.
A couple of million, apparently, yeah.
Turnbull, we can probably pick him up for similar to that as well. So if you can sell him and bring in two players that are going to improve your squad and your starting lineup, because does Turnbull start for Celtic at the moment? Probably not. I think it's brilliant business from the football club.
Mm-hmm. And again, Jim, a player of Tom Rogic's age, his aspirations on an international level, he needs to be playing more. It's a bit like Encham. He needs to be playing more than 16 or 17 games a season.
I like Tom Rogic, and he gave me great happiness when he scored the goals, the ones at Ibrox and up at Pittodrie. It's fantastic, but the man needs game time. Again, here we're back to game time, Paul.
Yes.
Young players, seasoned pros, they all need game time, and Tom Rogic, for his career, he needs game time, and for his country as well, he needs game time. So good luck to Tom.
Exactly. Everybody wishes him well, but he needs to go and play football.
Yes.
And if Celtic can reinvest that, just for this drive to 10 in a row, but I mean, Turnbull is an investment anyway, then I think they should go ahead with that.
What is the argument that Celtic fans have been making for Rogic to stay? Is it based on, what he's done in the past?
Past glories.
Right,
It's past glories. I mean, I look back on the fact he signed under Neil Lennon. He rarely played first time round. If you looked at the stats of the appearances under Lennon first time round, he rarely played. Does Lennon fancy him? Does he fit into Lennon's vision of what Celtic are and how we're going to go forward? Possibly not. I think that, coupled with the injury issues and the fact, I'd love to see the stats. How often does he finish 90 minutes?
Yeah,
I mean, it's sometimes a joke among Celtic fans, he only plays for an hour. And it is true when you actually look at the stats, he rarely finishes a game.
I think he was at his best. Celtic fans, we might have been against the course or whatever, and he's a sub at the time. When's Rogic coming on? When's he coming on? because they had that wee hope always in there that he was going to do something a wee bit
changes.
special.
He's got that in him. He's got that in him,
Absolutely.
without a doubt. Now, we don't labour. Here's another point actually via Facebook. Tom Roderick has been a great player for us, but he's not getting to get playing first team games. It might be better for him to get playing regular. I think so. I think that's what the consensus is within State of Mind Studios today. We don't generally speak about other players outside Celtic Park, but there is a player who obviously is close to my heart in Lyndon Dykes, because, you know, somewhere down the line we'll be related. Going back to my football ability, maybe not. But then he's a guy that caused us a few problems. And we've criticised Julien for the fact that he has caused us these problems. But the reason I bring him up is one of our regular contributors, Kevin Graham, criticised Lyndon Dykes and said he was rotten. I don't know if that was his exact words. He's just completed a £2 million move to Queen's Park Rangers.
Right.
By this time next week, we'll probably know if he's going to be a Scottish cap, right? Because you've got, you know, Australia and Scotland both chasing him. And quite frankly, I'm delighted that he's away. I'm delighted that he's away down to London, so that we don't have that issue when we come up against Livingston away from home that we've had in the past.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant for Scottish football that a team like Livingston can get £2 million for a player. It breaks our record transfer fee considerably, and you know, the more money that's invested in Scottish football, be it transfers, sponsorship, is brilliant for the game. And you know, the fact they've been able to get him from Queen of the South, who also get a six-figure sum, which is probably well needed for them. I think they've only got 3 players on the books at the moment. But you know, at Queen's, I think he scored 23 goals and 34 assists. It's not 126 games. It's not a great record. You know, he's not an out-and-out goal scorer, but what he does is he works incredibly hard for the team. He's a physical presence. He can ruffle centre defenders like he's done famously with Julian. He's also quite good in the press. He presses really well. I think we should just look at it as a, you know, I'm not a Celtic fan again, but from a fan of Scottish football, it's great that these clubs can be getting that amount of money in, and it's important now that they go and replace him, which is going to be the difficult part of Livingston. I think he's a good player, and I think that he'll be I think he'll pick Scotland.
Do you think he'll cut it, QPR?
It's interesting you mention it, because I look at his game and I say it's suited to the Football in England's Championship, which is very physical. It can be, you know, quite long at times, and it can be quite hectic. My one concern is who's QPR's manager. It's Mark Warburton, and famously, from his time at Rangers and his time at other clubs, Warburton tends to play one kind of way. It's very intricate passing and moving the ball, short, sharp passing. And to me, does that suit Dykes' game? It'll be interesting to see.
Everybody's entitled to their opinion.
Yes.
I don't believe there's such a thing as a rotten professional football.
I'd agree with that.
There isn't.
I'd agree with that, Jim.
No professional football player is rotten. Professional football players find that their level, whether it be in the low tiers of Scottish football or the high tiers of world football, everybody's got their level, but there's no such thing as somebody being. I don't mean that against a Kevin or whatever. I don't mean to be.
Kevin's responding as you speak here, Jim.
Is
so,
he?
yeah.
Right. So I can't see what he's responded, but Dykes is a good player. They're all good
thank
players. They're all good players.
Yeah.
But other players are at a different level.
Yeah.
From him.
I always remember it, Jim. I used to go and watch a friend of mine who played for Dunfermline Reserves, and when we were going home, I would criticise various players in the team and think, how does he? And what he explained is exactly what you just said there. These people are the best in their region. These are the guys that if you were playing in their team, maybe as a schoolboy, they would be head and shoulders above you. Yeah. It just sometimes either it doesn't work out for them at a certain club, or they might not look great to the typical fan, but they're doing a job. They're doing a job. Kevin responds, this is the great thing about the live broadcast, Ewan. The only reason that QPR have paid silly money is the warped judgment of Mark Warburton.
I mentioned him. I mentioned Warburton. To me, it's a great price for Livingston, and it shows you that. I listened to a podcast the other day, and it's talked about in Scottish football, players outside, you know, the big two tend to be on 1-2 year contracts, which means that, you know, quite often their contracts run down and they move for nothing.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing for me is Livingston getting £2 million is incredible. You know, it doesn't matter what I think about. If he's worth 2 million, it's doesn't matter to me, it's not in my pocket. But they've done well to hold off, because they could have easily jumped at it when £1 million came up. They didn't. They backed themselves, and I just think it's really good for Scottish football when you see players go for big money per se, relatively, and hopefully Livingston can use that and invest it in the right way.
I think it's great for Livingston. What age is he?
I think he's 26.
26. So he's got a good few years to prove himself down there. Maybe
24. Sorry,
is he 24? So there you go.
Yeah. Good age.
24. So plenty of room for him to develop in his game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Plenty of room for him to develop his game.
What interests me, Ewan, there's been a discussion point that's come and gone throughout the bulletins, but also due to some of the guests that we had on last month. And the discussion point is 10 in a row, what next? Going back to what Jim said earlier, I'm not taking it for granted. We're going to have to work really hard to win the league this season. But I'm of the view that the only way Celtic can progress is by moving away from where they are currently in the Scottish game. People throw that suggestion out the water by saying that, it can't happen. Well, as David Lowe was saying on a previous podcast, the pandemic has been a game changer. We've yet to see the economic impact to football clubs. And we don't know what the Scottish leagues and other leagues around Europe are going to look like, let's say come November or even at the beginning of next year. With regards to what next for Celtic, from a guy who's a neutral, who might be saying, well, that's a pretty selfish of you, Paul, to say that Celtic should move elsewhere. What's your view on what do Celtic do next? Is it enough to just say, we stay ahead of Rangers, we win 11, we win 12? Is that enough? Because as a Celtic supporter, I don't feel it is. I think we need to improve our performances in Europe. And the only way we can do that is on a higher level. And what I mean by that is a level that allows you to develop due to the finance. And we're never going to have that in Scottish football.
We've seen the famous kind of quotes coming down from England all the time about the quality of our league up here, but Rangers and Celtic, with the revenue that the English clubs would receive from broadcasting in particular, would be a serious problem to the bigger clubs if they were in the English leagues now. It's not for me to say. I've got no idea how that would ever work, and I don't even know. Do you think the majority of Celtic fans would favour that? I
think the glamour of moving elsewhere would interest a lot of Celtic fans. There are traditionalists amongst us, and many on this podcast have said, they think back to Love Street 86. They would hate to lose going to famous grounds all around Scotland and having these ties against St Johnstone and against Motherwell. Personally, I would be off. I'd be gone.
Footballers, musicians, singers, they're all entertainers. Mm-hmm. And every entertainer wants to get to the top venue that they can get to in the world. Where it's playing to 100,000 people for a band, or playing in front of a crowd of 130,000 over at Real Madrid or wherever it may be. Every player is an entertainer, and they want to play in the highest platform that's given to them. So a club like Celtic would absolutely prosper to no end getting into the English league, or a league that may come up in the near future. Definitely, Ewan.
It's all hypothetical because we don't know how it would ever work, and I don't know if it ever could work. But the other way to look at it as well is it'd be quite interesting to see if Rangers and Celtic left. Speaking completely hypothetically here, but how it would actually impact the Scottish league for the other teams, because you'd be in a position then where you've got Motherwell, Hearts, Aberdeen, Hibernian, who could all feasibly challenge to win the leagues, and the cup competitions wouldn't be a one club dominance like we've seen over the last, and previously we've seen with Rangers 9 and Celtic's 9 before that. So it'd be very interesting to see how it happens. For me, looking at from the outside, it seems like all the focus from Celtic this season is purely on winning 10 in a row.
Yes.
And you could argue the same from Rangers. Their main focus is trying to stop 10 in a row. So it'll be interesting to see how much long-term thinking is going on at the clubs in terms of recruitment. Are they looking to buy players in for this season predominantly, or are they kind of stop looking at it 2-3 years down the line? This is a player might come in and develop in our first team. No, we want it now. And I think by the signing of Duffy, for example, if that goes through, that'd be an excellent signing for Celtic.
Yeah, you're right. It's one of these things that keeps coming up. 1998 was the time where Celtic actually tried to make inroads into the English game, and we spoke to Paul Smith about it, who was involved in the negotiations for Fergus McCann about buying Wimbledon Football Club. I was intrigued by that story. But then, after they pulled the shutters down on that by introducing new laws in football in 1998, we were looking at a transatlantic league. But going back to your point there, that would be meritocracy. So Celtic could be relegated. Aberdeen could be promoted into that league structure. So a lot of the other clubs might look at that and think that would be a better option, you know, for the likes of Belgium, the Netherlands, Scotland, and various other. I think it was 8 different nations who were involved in this league. But there was relegation and there was promotion. So that is another option that perhaps the clubs will look at. I know they were looking at it as an alliance back in the day. I doubt very much that would be the case now. It would be a singular, individual, independent approach.
I think the concern from a lot of fans in Scottish football with the proposed introduction of B teams from Rangers and Celtic into the Lowland League was this part of a plan for the big two to move outside of Scotland, and then those B teams would become, you know, the Scottish sides. I don't think that should. I think that shouldn't happen. You know, there's one Celtic and there's one Rangers, and whoever they play, that should be that. There shouldn't be duplicate teams playing different divisions. It's all hypothetical. You know, football world changes day by day, year by year. So it'll be interesting in 10, 15 years' time where it's at. We'll see.
It'll be interesting to see where we are. It'll be interesting to see how we're broadcasting it. And tomorrow it'll be interesting to see what happens next with Peaky Blinders, because I'm only on series 2. But what I would say is that we've had loads of people contributing today. We can't always get through everybody's comments, but we do read them afterwards so that we can engage with you again in a future show. So thank you all for joining us on Facebook, Twitter and YouTube. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to us on YouTube. It's free of charge. All that's left for me to say is thank you to Ewan Robertson and Jim Simonetti for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.